Yeah, got it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm CBS 19 Chief Meteorologist Brett Anthony here in the Weather Center with an update, or a recap, you might call it, on last week's severe weather. We are live on our YouTube channel and streaming on our CBS 19 Plus app and also on our Facebook page. I'll try to answer any questions I can, but really I'll probably just go through what happened, recapping last week. Of course, we're talking about April 2nd through April 5th. This is across the country. 108 tornado reports at last count, 906 reports of wind, 363 reports of hail. So it was a historic storm by many stretches, and it will be long remembered. And we had many videos come into the Weather Center. In fact, this one coming to us from Reba Mason, this is in the Lindale area. This is a wall cloud, lowering for sure, and rotation within that wall cloud that we have not heard of any reports of tornadoes being produced by that wall cloud or that lowering, but certainly a turbulent and eerie sight with the sky appearing just a little bit on the green side. We knew there was some hail within that storm. All right, so let's take a look at, this is going to be a severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings between April 2nd to April 5th, and this does include East Texas. This doesn't mean each one of these was a tornado. This was any cell that was warned as a tornado warning. Of course, we had one in southeastern Smith County with a rotation near 110 in Grande. No reports of any touchdown there. And then, of course, we had a tornado warning that started in Henderson County that moved up through parts of Van Zandt County, eventually into Wood and Upshur County and all the way into Morris County. And then there was another long tornado warning that went all the way up toward Clarksville. Have not heard of any kind of report or a survey of any type of tornado up there. We had a couple of tornado warnings over in northern Harrison, Marion County on Thursday, and then severe thunderstorm warnings down to the south on Saturday. That's just here in East Texas, but look at the rest of the country. It was incredibly active. A streak of severe thunderstorms Thursday night out to the west, or I should say Thursday night out to the west. Some of this was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with just a number of tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, and that's not even to include the flash flood warnings. We added in the flash flood warnings. You can see that this was also a heavy rain producer. That's why we're hearing lots of reports of flooding across Kentucky and Arkansas, up into parts of Tennessee and even into Ohio. So lots of flooding all the way through the Mid-South and up into the Ohio River Valley. We did have our own severe or flash flood warnings here in East Texas. There was a large one for a number of hours from Cherokee County into northern Angelina County that stretched all the way up into Harrison County, all the way into the Shreveport area. We also had flash flood warnings in Smith County. Those went up through Wood and Upshur County and continued up to the northeast for several hours again. Most of those on Friday and Saturday. So far, April 4th confirmed tornadoes in East Texas. The Lone Star tornado, the strongest one at an EF2, 120 miles an hour. This one did probably the most significant damage that we've heard of. Upshur County EF1, this was 95 mile an hour storm that was in the Betty area. It was a short 1 mile storm. There was a 20 mile storm from Wood to Upshur County. It was on the ground for 20 miles. Peak winds there at 110 miles an hour. The strength on that's going to be in EF1. And then there was a short-lived tornado also over in the Van Zandt area, 80 mile an hour winds producing EF0 damage near Grand Saline over in Van Zandt County. So 4 so far confirmed. All right, so this is going to be just a replay of the loop of the tornado warnings. There's going to be as many as 3 supercells producing tornadoes. This one near Lindale with that lowering that I showed you, but that eventually did become the tornado that touched down in Wood County up through Upshur County and eventually began to lift right around the Lone Star area, producing some damage there. And then moving on up into Douglasville into Cass County before it weakens. So that's one. I'll go back and try to find, there's going to be another one that'll come out of Henderson County here that moved north and eastward. This one went all the way up. In fact, let me back that up and play it again for us. So we're going to play that again so we can see the motion on that. There's going to be three. You've got the one up here toward Emory that spins up a tornado near Sulphur Springs, that bright green and red. That went all the way up to Clarksville. Here's the other one near Mineola. This one weakened as it went up toward Winsboro. And then the third one down here became the strongest one with that rotation near Lindale, eventually becoming the tornado near Hawkins, damaging the Ozarka water bottling plant, and eventually moving up into Cass County before that one also weakened. So we take little snapshots of these tornado warnings. This is going to be the Grand Saline, Canton one just north of Interstate 20, green going toward Fort Worth, radar red going away, so there's a pretty tight little couplet there. Again, this was last Friday. This isn't happening right now if you are tuning in. And then we had, of course, this very strong tornado just to the north of Hawkins. And we've got some very bright, in fact, this thing was wrapping around on itself. As you can see, evidenced by that white that we're seeing here. This is where we were sampling at one point about 110 to 115 mile an hour winds. So just north of Hawkins, doing that damage there at the Ozarka water bottling plant. And then we'll go to the storm here that is northwest of Gilmer. This is a really interesting storm, and I'll show you why here in just a second. But note these powerful winds coming in on the backside. This is called the rear flank downdraft of the storm. The storm itself is pulling the winds in from behind, wrapping those up into the updraft, and then, of course, the updraft is turning all the way through the mesocyclone up and higher into the sky. So this storm itself, because of these very powerful winds, which might have been in the order of 80 to 90 miles an hour, look what it did. So the winds are blowing the water of Lake Gilmer up over the roadway, almost like a power washer, okay, and it scoured. This is asphalt that you're seeing here. This isn't debris from trees or leaves. This is the water taking the asphalt and just scouring it. This photo comes to us from Shelby Henderson at FM 852. So just a fantastic image of how powerful the winds are, not only sometimes in the tornado, but in the inflow or the rear flank downdraft of the storm, powerful enough to where it scoured the roadway and created this very unusual damage pattern there across FM 852. All right, now back to the Lone Star tornado, which did a lot of damage at the church camp up there. And this one, just instantly, you could see tight red and green right next to each other. So it spun up and tightened up very quickly and intensified briefly as it moved out of Morris County and eventually into Cass County, and then it weakened just a little bit further. All right, so let's talk about our next severe weather chance. Do we have one coming up here? Well, this is going to be looking this evening, and every one of these little light green areas, this is going to be areas of spin. Very weak spin here the rest of the week. There is just a little stronger, better organized storm that moves into the mid-Mississippi River Valley, Ohio River Valley. That'll come up on Thursday and into Friday that goes by. East Texas, nothing here. Another little storm system that moves across the northern plains middle part of next week. So maybe a little severe weather chance there. No severe weather this week here, but not far away. That little spin brings in a level 1 out of 5 or a marginal risk of severe weather from Memphis to Atlanta up to Cincinnati, and that's going to be Thursday afternoon. That's as close as we get to severe weather. Our next chance to see any kind of severe weather here probably isn't going to come until after April 18th. This is as far out as I can get data on this graphic. But this little storm system out here off the Pacific, not little, but it's quite large. 21st, 22nd of April starts to move into the Central Plains. That might start to bring in some moisture from the Gulf and get a little better dynamics going on here. The winds here are strong enough that maybe we get a small severe weather risk north of St. Louis up to Chicago by the 18th. So the April outlook, and this is based on the cycling weather pattern. So we've looked back at the cycling weather pattern, and we know the March 4th part of the weather pattern is returning. And that returns next week with just a couple of chances for some showers and thunderstorms. I think this one goes by just to our north. There'll be another little chance with that storm system coming out 22nd to 23rd. The better chance will come in for the end of April as we start to see the weather pattern that was a stormier part back in November recycle through. And that should set us up for a rather wet, stormy start to May. with a break. We have these large chunks of blue sky days like we're kind of seeing now. That we'll see those return in the middle part of May, and then toward the end of May, right around Memorial Day, we'll get back into a more active weather pattern. In fact, over the next 3 to 4 weeks, April 19th to May 2nd, and this is sort of reflecting that more active weather pattern, we're seeing above average rainfall very possible in that weather pattern. So that's a look at the very active and historic storm that moved through the Central Plains, Southern Plains, and East Texas. Again, we have quite a bit of time before we see another severe weather setup. That is certainly good news. So let's enjoy the sunshine. We'll have an update on our forecast coming up on CBS 19 News at 10. Thanks for watching.